Hello and welcome to How to Love Your Body. Today we are kicking off our first episode of our Intuitive Eating Principles series. So we're going back to basics. We're going to be summarizing and giving tips on the 12 principles of intuitive eating. This is an older edition, but it's the Intuitive Eating book by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, two dietitians who documented this way of eating. And I've said in our previous YouTube videos, if you haven't watched that, go check it out, about how intuitive eating is natural. We do intuitively eat if we weren't dieters. And Lauren and I actually discovered intuitive eating for ourselves before I even knew there was a book. Like I just started eating intuitively because that's what your body wants to do. Your body naturally listens to its signals and is relaxed around food if you can unwind all the diet mentality that we've been taught. So it's easier than it looks. It's not like, oh, now I have to learn all these new rules and follow it. But these 12 principles are some good guidelines to move forward and kind of make changes, especially coming from dieting to intuitive eating. So today I'm just going to be talking with Lauren about principle number 1, and then the next episode we will continue on with the other principles. So today is principle number 1, and I'm sure most of you have read the book before, or maybe you haven't. But principle number 1 is rejecting the diet mentality. And for Lauren and I, that's like 90% of the work we do. With our clients and with ourselves is just changing the way you think. So I'll give their summary of this principle. It says, throw out the diet books and magazine articles that offer you false hope of losing weight quickly, easily, and permanently. Get angry at the lies that have led you to feel as if you were a failure every time a new diet stopped working and you gained back all of the weight. If you allow even one small hope to linger that a new and better diet might be lurking around the corner, it will prevent you from being free to rediscover intuitive eating. So this first principle, to me, that says, you have to jump in with both feet. You have to fully commit to doing this and realizing I cannot diet one more day. I don't care how great I looked when I was dieting. I just can't do it. And that's really where I was hitting that rock bottom. And I think you were too, Lauren.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting how I never even knew that there was a word intuitive eating. And I don't know, we won't have to go back into the history of how we came to be, but I do remember it was kind of reversed for me, like Jenna said, where it's I kind of started doing all the principles before I knew they were actually labeled. And that's, which really was very interesting. Oh my gosh, we're naturally meant to do it this way. But I do believe with talking about this first principle is if we don't get rid of our stories about dieting, about diet culture, about how our bodies should look, or about thin and all of the things that we kind of have been brainwashed by diet culture by, if we don't break down those first, it is, I don't want to say impossible, because I guess nothing is impossible, but it would be very, very, very challenging to be able to work through all the other principles, but just become an intuitive eater in general if you didn't work with the mindset. So kind of how I see it, it's interesting because yesterday I was doing a little bike ride. I have the Peloton. It's really, one day I'm going to talk about that because it could be it's really great for the intuitive eating, undieting world. Anyway, and actually, I was doing a meditation by Peloton after I went on a ride, and as I was laying there, it was like a calming meditation, and they were talking about our stories, and we all can relate to having stories. If it's not about diet culture, it's about something else. So as I was in the meditation, I could literally kind of lift my stories out of my body, and I almost imagine them to be in a bubble. And then it was they were just floating away and popped and disappeared. And I just was really seeing it as, wow, in this world of undieting, we have so many stories about what we should look like, what we should be, how we should eat, what we should do, what the right thing is. And if we could just hear those stories and identify them and get very curious with them, what would it feel like if you just identified, oh, that's a story. I see that there's diet mentality in there. I'm going to put it in a bubble and just imagine it. I'm going to detach it from myself and let it float away and pop. And it becomes you realize that that's not part of your being. That's just part of your narrative and part of your story. So if you detached from it and you let it float away and you processed it and let it go and pop and disappear, you realize, wow, I'm actually not my story. And who would I be without my story? And a lot of peace and freedom comes rushing through your body when you realize that you can detach from all these stories. And that's kind of where this first principle is let's detach from all of these stories. And part of that is really identifying what are your stories.
And it really just depends. You got to figure out what those stories are. And so here's some examples. I'm a binge eater. I'm always going to be out of control with food. My body is too large. I need to make it smaller. I cannot trust myself at get-togethers with the food. I am so obsessed with food. I'm a food addict. That's a huge one.
I'm not allowed to eat carbs past this time, or I should never eat carbs, or any type of food rule that you have on you, even if it's like I can eat carbs in the morning, but I can't eat carbs for dinner. Like that's, even though you're allowing yourself carbs, that's a very intense diet rule. If you are restricting any type of food at any time of day, any time of day, if you are purposely restricting food, I mean, other than allergies and all of that stuff, of course, we understand that. But we're just talking like general being able to eat all foods. If you're restricting any type of food, that would definitely be something to look at.
Yeah, and that's all around the diet mentality. So I do want to kind of go over what the book says about the diet mentality. So the first one is the diet void. So this meaning when you stop dieting, there might feel like there's a void there because it says we use dieting as a coping mechanism. So it can be something that's a great distraction. It can be something that can be a quick win. If you're feeling down or things feel out of control, food and body might be something like, oh, that's something I can control. I'm going to dive back into my dieting. And then it says it's not unusual to begin a diet during the following life transitions, passing from childhood to adolescence. That's when I started.
I think that's where it caught us.
Yeah, is when I was becoming a teenager and thinking, oh, I'm kind of growing up now. I need to look a certain way. If you're leaving home, marrying, starting a new job, experiencing marital difficulties, all those things can trigger us to want to go back to dieting because the beginning of the diet does give you a high. It does feel good. So it says, while dieting may have been futile, it offered excitement and hope. And that is what I see so many people struggling with. It's like, okay, I know it's not going to work. It's like this cognitive dissonance. Like, I know it's not going to work, but I'm going to try it anyway, just because I'm so desperate for that excitement and hope again. And maybe this is the one. And there's that kind of hope, that wishful thinking of, okay, the past 50 diets didn't work, but this one, oh, they have a different angle. So this must be the one that's going to work, or this one's more gentle. And I think when we start learning about the non-diet approach, I think that first step, well, that's kind of coming up. That first step is thinking, well, this diet's less strict, so maybe that's going to work because that was just too strict. And then you kind of take these little tiny baby steps towards being non-diet. But it's like we said at the beginning, rejecting the diet mentality, this first principle, and the reason it's the first principle is because that first decision has to be, I'm freaking doing this. There's no going back. There's no other options for me. I have to figure this out because this life isn't working.
It's almost like imagine as if, like, what would happen if tomorrow we just woke up and like diet culture wasn't a thing? Like that'd be really cool. But what if like all the access to all the dieting was just gone? Like it just it went into thin air. It wasn't a thing anymore. How would you live your life if nobody even understood? Let's just say it became a foreign language. Like you were speaking a foreign language. Everybody's like, what are you talking about? What is that? What is dieting? What is restricting? Like if nobody understood what you were talking about, like how would you live your life? And I think that's when it kind of lets your brain come to the forefront where it's like, how do I choose to live my life now that there are no rules? And you get to be the one who makes those decisions.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I could go on a huge tangent on this because I've been feeling that a lot lately of like, this is going to look so different for people because non-diet, health at every size, intuitive eating does have a big social context. It does have a big discrimination context. It's have a very large societal context apart from our individual experience. So sometimes you can get lost in that. I know for myself, I can get lost in that where I'm like, I am focusing more on the big picture than myself, which I think is appropriate at times. But when that takes over and you're no longer thinking about like, what do I individually want right now? And sometimes I can't, like I need to focus on me more than fixing the world. So it's like this balance of the world is very unfair and there's a lot of discrimination and we need to change things around diet culture and fat phobia. But also I need to live my life in the meantime because I only have one and there's a limited amount of time. So how do I nurture both areas? How do I do what I want, even if it doesn't look exactly like society's version of non-diet look? So it really is about creating this for yourself. So if you do feel that void when you start, it's just being aware that like there might be a void when you stop dieting and it might have that pull of excitement. It might have that pull of hope. But if you plant your 2 feet in the ground of, no, I'm doing this. I have no plan Bs. I'm burning all the boats. Like there is no way out. I have to do this. That's going to be a way that you can actually make some progress. Mm-hmm. So the next section of this principle is the one last diet trap. I think that's funny because it's like, it's usually not one last diet trap. It's usually
like a million.
Yeah. Well,
at
least a few. But the one last diet trap of like, oh, I'll just try one more. And then if it doesn't work, I'll do intuitive eating or, oh, but I found this new thing. And we do see that a lot in, like people that we talk with and work with in this work where maybe they were going along this journey for a couple months. And they got sucked into that hope or that emptiness or that feeling of that void and using it as a coping mechanism of like, I don't feel good physically or I don't feel in control. So I'm just going to go back, like all the way back to where I started. And that's super common, but understanding that's a trap. It's not going to work. It's just going to put you backwards and you have to start. And you're not going to start where you left off. Like I do find it kind of takes you back a little bit. Yeah. And then there's more mentality work and mindset work and work with food that you have to do again because you've gone backwards, which is not the end of the world. And that totally might happen for you and that's fine. But realizing that that's a trap might prevent you from falling into it. So this is a letter that Evelyn and Elise received from somebody and they put it in the book around this section. So I wanted to read it. I've been in the dieting dilemma all my life. Every diet I've ever been on has worked for me, at least what I thought of as worked. It worked in the past was losing a certain number of pounds, never considering the reality of regaining the weight plus more with each and every diet I went on. At age 36, I came to a point in my life where I was dieted out. And I think that's where like most of us are hitting and why we're here.
You hit a wall and you just can't do it for one more day.
Yeah. I knew there had to be another way, yet my first thought was to let myself find one more diet for the last time. And I would make a promise to myself to never gain the weight back through a change in lifestyle. I think that's another thing people think like, oh, I got to lose the weight first, then I'll start intuitive eating. That, and then the intuitive eating will allow me to maintain that lower weight. It's like, that's not how it works. That's like
intuitive eating can be turned into a diet very quickly.
Oh, yes. But that's like saying, oh, before I put this towel in the dryer, I'm going to pour a glass of water on it and then put it in the dryer. It's like, well, you're just going backwards just to try to go forwards again. So dieting is always going to get you further away from being intuitive. And then once you go back in intuitive eating, that's all erased. Like there is no, oh, I'm going to lose weight on this diet and then I'm going to maintain that through intuitive eating. Like if you got to that weight by restricting, if you stop restricting, yes, you're likely going to gain the weight back, if not more again, every time. There is no magic diet, no matter how gentle, no matter how relaxed, no matter how lenient, that's going to allow you to purposefully change your body size and then allow you to maintain it with ease and grace and through being intuitive. It's just not going to work. So the advice so far is commit to this, realize, okay, I'm doing this. I have no plan Bs. Understanding there might be a void there when the dieting stops, and it might have these kind of more superficial trappings that are really appealing. Like getting social praise, having something to do with your time that feels really productive that we've been taught is so good and wonderful. Like there might be a void there. And if you're aware of that, then when you feel it, you can work through it a bit better. And then avoiding that one last diet trap. That last diet before you dive into it, intuitive eating, is just getting you further from the starting line. It's not actually going to help at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the great thing is once you really do just kind of dive right in, trust the process, say, I'm done with the diets, you start working through the mindset of ditching the diet mentality. It's like once you just continue on this process and you keep trusting the process, it's like you will actually start getting to where you want to go a lot faster, because we know that diets are getting you nowhere fast. That's for sure. Because now that I could see back to when I first started intuitive eating, and like I said, it wasn't like I am today starting intuitive eating. It was like this natural process of I'm not dieting anymore and I'm going to do it differently. And now that was like, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And so I can now look back and understand I'm even though I've been intuitive eating this whole time, I have evolved and changed over the past 7 years without being a dieter at all. Mm-hmm. So you'll get to find your own groove on how you want to be and how you want to feel. And once you kind of like just let it go and dive in, you can trust that you will find your way throughout the process, because it is an ebb and flow. It is a journey. If we're going to call it a journey, it's a process. But what I can say is dieting or falling back into dieting isn't gonna, it will teach you a lot of lessons, but it's not going to get you to where you want to be with intuitive eating and with undieting. Mm-hmm. So there is a trust factor here too.
Yeah. Because that dieting is just going to send you in circles, right? It's the diet cycle for a reason. Mm-hmm. And intuitive eating, even though it might feel like you have starts and stops and you're forward and there's two steps back, you're always moving forward. You're always moving towards something new, which is like feeling good in your body, being relaxed with food, having a healthy relationship with food, feeling more balanced and quote unquote sane around food and in your skin. And you're always moving forward, even when you have those hiccups, even when it feels like, oh, I was feeling so confident. And now today I'm feeling more insecure. It's like, that doesn't matter. You're in the journey. As long as you're not going back on a diet and restricting and pursuing weight loss, you're moving forward. But it can be hard. And like I said, it's not going to give you that same high as dieting, but it gives you the prolonged contentment. It really does get you to where you thought dieting would get you.
It's kind of asking yourself, what is your intention and how do you want to live your life? Because I can kind of, I know that I think dieting for me and all this body stuff that I've been through in my past, I do think the center of it is control. Like of course, thinner or whatever, all the ego stuff, and obviously that's there. And I think the thing for me is like it provided control and safety for me, even though it's like a false sense of control because we really don't have control over our bodies. But dieting makes you feel like you do for a second or for however long. And so even like over the past however many years, 7 years I've been intuitive eating, I don't even know if that's correct. Like what are our years now? Like
I think it's around 6 or 7.
Yeah. Okay. But the point is, it's sometimes even in my life now, of course, it could feel absolutely out of control. And sometimes I am trying to like find how I can find control again. And again, it's still a false sense of control pretty much everywhere I go. And not that I would ever go on a diet ever again, because that's not me. There is a moment where there is a feeling of like wanting to control. And if it ever goes towards like food or movement, I immediately check in on that. And I'm like, yeah, that might provide some control for me or some power. Oh, I can have some power over my life where I have no power anywhere else. And I'm like, and that is not how I want to live my life anymore. Like, my intention is to never, not that it really hasn't been like, I really feel like going on a diet, but it could be like, I'm feeling out of control. Like, maybe I need to go get on the Peloton. And maybe that's like really good for my mental health. But sometimes I'm like, I feel like it's not coming from like a mental health point, it's coming from somewhere else. And then I check myself. So it's really important to really ask yourself, how do you want to live? Like, it's okay that I just ate that and I feel this way, because I can't imagine a life where I wouldn't allow myself to have dessert or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, even if I feel uncomfortable in my body right now and I might feel like I need control, I want to feel better again. It's like, yeah, I do want to feel better. And I did eat too much, or not too much, but I'm having a sensation in my body that feels uncomfortable. It's, well, I choose to have that in my life because that is how I want to live, regardless of if it gives me discomfort sometimes.
Yeah.
And so it's really asking yourself, just how do you want to be? And I want to be somebody who never diets again and gets to eat whatever I want to eat and move however I want to move without being controlled by diet culture.
Yeah. And I mean, that's another thing, right? We exert control on our bodies through diets, but it's actually the dieting that controls us. And I think we all know
Totally.
that. Because like I was so out of control with food and my body and how I saw my body. Now when I look at pictures, I'm like, I'm amazed at how effed up your vision gets. Your actual eyeballs.
Well, it's body dysmorphia.
It's so
It's a thing.
wild. It's like, and this is okay. We always give tangents and examples, but
I think our people that listen to us just understand that we're going to go on tangents, and they'll be here if they like it or not.
Yeah. Okay. So an example is I was with my niece this weekend, and we're doing like once a month, we're getting together and doing a painting because she's gotten into paintings, and I've done painting classes before. So we did an oil painting. And we were both starting it. I'm like, this looks ridiculous. And then we're both doing it. She's 11. So like hers was like, obviously like more kiddish, but so well done. I'm like, wow, you're doing so great. And then we're doing our paintings, and me and her mom were saying like, cause she's like, oh, this one looks so bad. This flower looks so bad. And we're like, no, you got to like leave it for a while and come back, because even you get dysmorphic with your painting. It's like you get too close and too involved and you're looking too closely at one section of the painting and it looks so bad. But if you actually like go prop it up, go walk across the room, kind of walk around and come back to it, it's like, oh, wow, the overall thing looks pretty good. Like I'm not a professional, but oh, that doesn't look horrible. So it's the same with our bodies. Is like when we're hyper fixated, it's like it starts getting morphed in our brains of what we actually look like, and you're focused on one part. And so working on the diet mentality, working on this first principle allows you to take that step back, take that break and come back. And no, the point is not to look at yourself and think you look hot. Like, that doesn't matter. That's kind of the point, is like, who cares what you look like? You need to go live your life and have a great life, and you're going to look however you look while living your best life according to you. And so this work does allow you to kind of take a step back. So focusing on the way your body looks so much, start changing the way you think so that you can see yourself more clearly, which I think we all know we can see other people more clearly. And then for ourselves, it's like, oh, but I'm not good enough. But I can't. They can be that size, but I can't be that size. And that's because of that dysmorphia of like, we do not see ourselves properly if we're overly fixated on looking at ourselves. Whether it's like mentally of like thinking about yourself all the time, or thinking about how crazy you are with food, or thinking about the way your body looks, or actually looking in the mirror. Any which way is like, if you're hyper fixated on it, it starts to get skewed. So this work allows you to take that step back. So the next point they make is these are kind of the things they are reminding us to be aware of so this one is pseudo dieting. And this is because when you're a dieter and you start working on the diet mentality, you start exiting diet culture, rejecting the diet mentality, you're going to think, this is so great. I'm allowing rice with my dinner and I never allowed carbs. And that's great. That's a great step. But if that's all you've changed and you still have rules around what carbs you can have or when you can have them or how much you can have, that's still dieting. even if you're just thinking, oh, I'm just going to be sensible, that's still dieting because you still have an idea of what sensible is. And that's probably quite rooted in diet culture. And, oh, I'm supposed to have this many fruits and vegetables a day, which, yes, nourishment is a part of this work, but that's the last principle. Oh my gosh, I just realized something I have to check now because in the intuitive eating book, did I say 12 principles? I think there's only 10 principles. Let me just check. There
are 10.
There's 10. There's 10 principles. I was saying 12 principles. I knew that there was only 10.
Well, good thing I did not catch on to that. It's all good.
So the 10 principles, of the 10 principles, this is the first because you got to really realize what dieting is. Any sort of idea of shoulds around food is a diet. And I know a lot of people will find our work or find intuitive eating and say, oh, well, I've never been a dieter. It's like, but I've always not liked the way my body looked, but I always try to eat healthy, but I just try to be sensible. Like all of that is put under the umbrella of dieting. Dieting does not mean you went on a specific plan and paid to get a meal plan and followed that meal plan to a T or followed these certain rules and the diet didn't have it didn't have a name. It's like, it's still dieting. If you are pursuing weight loss, that's dieting. If you are restricting food in any way, that's dieting. If you are, even if you're freely eating, but saying, oh, I shouldn't eat that. I shouldn't have eaten that. I shouldn't have done that. That's dieting. All of that is considered dieting, and we need to get far out of it, which feels it feels out of control at first, right?
Even just like talking and thinking about it and being in that conversation is just part of diet mentality. Yeah, even if you do feel, like you eat what you're going to eat, but you could be with anybody and they're always commenting on like, oh, I'm going to order this, and like, oh, I should get the side salad instead of the French fries, and then everybody says, oh yeah, I'm being so bad too. Like even if you're eating it, like if you're part of the conversation of like, yes, I'm being so bad, oh my goodness, or like, I mean, there's so many different examples. It's like, not that you are a problem, of course, like everybody has been into this world. We've talked about it. We've done this too, but that is still like part of the mindset. Like that's ingrained in your brain. Like if you are saying, oh, I'm being so bad because I ordered the French fries, like I don't want to go over the top, but I would say that is pretty intense. That is part of the problem. There's nothing wrong with eating French fries, and there's nothing wrong with eating the salad. It's all, instead of outwardly looking externally on like, oh, I'm so bad I'm eating the French fries, it's more of like, how do I feel inside my body?
What do I want to eat?
Yeah. Do they sound good? Yeah, they sound great. Okay, I'm going to eat the amount that feels good to me or not. It doesn't always have to be so perfect. It's just more of like, you get rid of all the external diet crap and you bring it back and you go internal and you start asking your body questions and your signals, and that's how you make decisions.
Yeah.
And nothing is bad or wrong.
Yeah. And that's the mentality shift of like from outside to inside. So here's a bit what they say about it. In the world of weight management, quote unquote, dieting is the cultural paradigm by which we attempt to control our weight. So dieting, like I said, it is not a meal plan. It is not a program. It doesn't need to have a name. It is just the cultural paradigm by which we attempt to control our weight. So the way we think and our culture's idea of how we're supposed to be doing this. So a paradigm shift, which is what rejecting the diet mentality is a break with tradition. It's a break from old ways of thinking and with old paradigms. We must change our paradigm to reject dieting. Only then can we build a healthy relationship with food in our bodies. So it's like, and it is fascinating when you see yourself thinking differently, because you will. And at first it's going to take intentional practice of, oh, I said I was so bad for eating those fries, and you have to actively go like, no, that's not bad. If I want them, I can get them. You kind of have to like correct your own thinking for a while, and that can be frustrating.
Got to rewire the brain.
Yeah. But then it does come, and it's like, I do live in a different paradigm than I used to. My brain would not know how to interact with my old brain. It would be like, what? Because I had so many assumptions about, of course I need to be as thin as possible. Of course, I will not be loved unless I am as conventionally attractive as I can be. Of course, carbs are bad. Of course, it was just like, duh. My brain was like really thinking it was obvious that all this was true. And now my brain is like, how ridiculous is that? But it's like naturally, I don't have to try to convince myself every day to think this way. It is a natural shift. So you will find that shift. You just have to actively be doing it. So this is
actively be conscious, spot it, be curious, and then shift the thought. It almost is annoying at the beginning because you have to be so like hyper focused on what are my thoughts? How do I think about this? And then it's kind of pushing back and saying, actually, that's not the truth. And what is the truth for me? No, and definitely. That's a lot of work because we could be diet culture all day long.
Yeah. And I did want to give kind of the few quick steps they give to how to actually do this. How do you reject diet mentality? So step 1, recognize and acknowledge the damage that dieting causes. And I also think this is important. You need to learn, like, educationally, the diets don't freaking work. You have to really get in your brain, like, through either literature or podcasts or whatever you want to do, that this shit doesn't work. Like, you
or just look at your own past.
Well, yeah. And getting all those sources together, I think, is really beneficial. Look at your own past. How has dieting worked? You wouldn't be listening to this or watching this if it worked. You would just be happily going along on your diet. So clearly it didn't work for you. And I'm telling you right now, it didn't work for me. It didn't work for Lauren. It didn't work for the over 700 people we have in our app. It didn't work for the 125,000 people that follow us on Instagram. It didn't work for the...
So don't worry, you're not failing. Yeah. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. It didn't work. We've officially just hit 1 million downloads of our podcast, which was really exciting. It didn't work for any of those people. Like, you have to really get it in your bones. Like, it universally does not work scientifically. This is not a personal failure. And I think, this is the only time when I think actual educational knowledge is helpful of really convincing yourself and in the true, genuine understanding of, it doesn't work. Because if you've got, the part of us kind of thinks it will, if you still want to diet.
Well, only if you're also comparing, because you may be saying, but it works for them. Look at their body. Look what they do. But you can't, you have different genetics. You have different everything. You don't know what's going on in their life. So it really is also not comparing and acting as if it does work for somebody else.
And it might work for them at this exact moment, but talk to me in 10 years. Like, it worked for me for 10 years. I was a poster child for, oh my gosh, she's so fit. She's always at the gym. She's so healthy, Okay, but I was in my room binging every weekend and I was completely miserable and I was so hyper-focused on the way I looked. And I was honestly the most insecure I've ever been in my life when I was the thinnest and modeling.
So I would have to say that didn't work then, because yes, it maybe worked
for
you.
But from the outside for a decade, if someone was watching me, they'd say, but it's working for her for 10 years. And no one's watching someone for more than 10 years.
If somebody has something externally that you see and you make an assumption it must work because I see that it's working, or their body is this, or they lost this weight, I would not take that as the ultimate truth, because I would want to go inside their brain and see what are your thoughts? What do you think about all day long? How do you picture yourself? How do you think about food? That's what I would want to know before I would say, yeah, but it works for them, because I have said it 1 million times over the whole course of the Body Love Society, is that the most priceless thing that I got back was my peace of mind, because that's what made me go crazy for over 10 years with the dieting. Was, yes, physically I went up and down depending on the restricting and the binging. So technically it did work for me physically when I was in a super restrictive moment. But my brain for 10 years, I don't think it stopped 1 second. I really don't think I had one peaceful day around food and my body for 10 years. Right. And
but the real kicker is I didn't know that in the 10 years. In the 10 years, it felt fine. It didn't feel fine, but it felt worth it maybe.
Well, it felt for me, it was I didn't think it was well, part of me was like, this cannot be normal. I feel like I'm suffering. I am miserable, but there's no other way. I can't stop dieting, or I can't stop going to the gym, or like, it just was like, this is what I have to do. And I just told myself, this is something that you're just going to have to deal with for the rest of your life. Like I just literally did not think there was another way to be, because diet culture was so strong. And of course, I do think I was on the disordered side. So I think mental illness, or the depths of control that I needed, what was going on in my life. Like, clearly I needed to talk to a therapist, but I wasn't doing that stuff back in the day. So there's so many moving parts, but let me tell you, for me, the mental part of this is the most important part for me.
Well, yeah. So I think if you get that information, so if that's the phase you're in of like, I don't quite know if I believe this yet, start reading about it. Start listening to things. Reflect on your own past. Reflect on people in your lives past. Do you have dieters in your life? Are they always starting and stopping? Do you have friends who have dieted but gained the weight back? Like, look around you. And yes, you may find that one person they gained weight and kept it off. First of all, it's not that losing weight is impossible. It's that dieting and trying to control your body for it to be something that it's not meant to be is going to backfire. And so learning about that backfiring too is like especially with like binge eating. If you truly learn the core of binge eating is restriction, you're going to want to stop restricting, because that binge eating is so hard. It's so painful. It's so like distressing mentally. So if you can get that connection there and truly, truly understand and believe the science, it's a lot easier to let go. Because it's easier to let go of something you no longer believe in than it is something like, oh, but I mean, I'm not quite sure if I don't think that's true. That can't be true, because I have a friend who lost weight, and it's like, don't worry about your stupid friend. Just focus on yourself.
Yeah, let's worry about ourselves and what's going on inside ourselves. Because it's very easy.
If it hasn't worked for you for 20 years, it ain't gonna. So let's move on.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on, everybody. Let's move on.
Step 2, be aware of diet mentality, traits, and thinking. So 1 is that you're saying like, forget willpower. Like, willpower is not a thing. So stop thinking you need more of it, or that you couldn't use it and that it's going to help you. Like, it is not. It is a non-renewable resource. So when you run out of it, it's not like a muscle where the more you use it, the stronger you get. It depletes. So
the more willpower you have in dieting, the more binging you'll have. But on the other side of it,
it's that teeter totter. It's that
I had a lot of willpower, and then when I
didn't,
and that was the cycle for 10 years. Have the willpower. I did a great job, and then the inevitable binge happened. You reset, go straight back into the cycle.
Yeah. And then it says like, forget about being obedient. So there are no shoulds. And then some other mentalities that we have taught in our courses and things like that is catastrophic thinking. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to, if I do this and this is going to happen and that's going to happen. So it's like that really getting really big thoughts about not the present. So it's like, what's going to happen in the future? It's such a catastrophe. It's so horrible. Everything's going to be the worst thing ever, and my life's going to be over. That thinking can be really common. Black and white thinking, or all or nothing thinking. So it's like, oh, I ate that cookie, so screw it, I'm going to go wild. Or, oh, I worked out, so now I better eat a healthy meal after. Like, that is all or nothing thinking. I love working out and then like getting pizza after. Like, it's such a lovely combination. It's like satisfying food, and I feel good and strong in my body. So you got to realize, like, am I flexible in my thinking?
And you didn't connect the two, that you don't get to have the pizza because you worked out.
Exactly. I didn't earn it from the workout. It's just 2 events that happen at the same time that I enjoy because I really like satisfying food, but I also like moving my body. And it's not all or nothing. And so all those types of thinking can be so beneficial to like look at and assess when you're doing this work. So step 3, get rid of the dieter's tools. So we always teach that as well. It's like, get rid of the scales, get rid of the measuring tapes, delete any old like progress pictures, get rid of the diet cookbooks, get rid of any physical thing that you use to diet. Measuring cups, those stupid colored cups you might have in your cupboard. What other things could you have? Old magazines laying around.
A big one is like goal weight clothes. I remember I've shared this story before, but it just brought me right back. In college, I literally pinned up my goal weight pants on the wall. So I look at them every
So
day. And it's
sad.
like, looking back, it's like, that is so horrible that every time I walked into my college dorm room, I looked at the wall to see pants that I could not fit into, but it was like, I must fit into these and I will be worthy when I get into these. And it was just like a constant reminder of, you are not enough because you don't fit into these pants. And let me tell you, fitting into those pants was like, literally, I had to have a eating disorder to get into those pants.
And
And
also,
it's
like,
like, I did it
and
anyway.
the day you put them on, nothing changed. Like, they're just freaking pants.
I know. It's not like the world threw me a party. It was just like nobody cared.
I know, it's so harmful. Like,
And even if I got the party, what does that even mean? You know?
exactly. It's
Like,
very,
it
like, you
means,
have the party and then it's so empty afterwards, which I
and then
find,
everybody goes home and you are still with yourself living in your miserable disorder of your mindset, your physical feeling. Like, I mean, it was very physical and very mental, and it's stress. It's just high stress and high overwhelm on you at all times to have what? One moment of, oh, you look really great in your pants. I mean,
buy other pants. That's what we say. Okay,
yeah.
step 4 is be compassionate toward yourself. So I just like this little excerpt. So in her book, The Religion of Thinness, Harvard trained theologian and scholar Michelle Laluica makes a compelling argument about how the endless pursuit of thinness through dieting fulfills a spiritual hunger. So the pursuit of dieting serves as an ultimate purpose by providing a set of myths to believe regarding the rewards of thinness. That's huge. It's like that exact thing. Like, you had a belief that there was such a big reward to get in those pants that you dedicated your life to it, when there really is no
Mm-hmm.
reward. Like, it's all an illusion. Like, nobody freaking
Mm-hmm.
cares if you wear those pants or
No,
not.
no.
Offering rituals to organize the daily lives of women. And isn't that our culture of like a morning ritual, an evening ritual? This is my routine. Da, 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 da. It's like, we really have been taught like, oh, getting like being rigid, having routines, having everything in place is really going to get your life together. It's like, sometimes we need room for flexibility and organic ways of living.
That's when I feel like I live the most. When I kind of release the rules, have a bit of freedom, let go of that to-do list and the box that you put yourself in every single day, because we all have our to-dos and the kids. It's like the most freeing days are the days where you just allow yourself to adventure and be free. And that's exactly how it is with undieting. Like, undieting is like allowing yourself to live outside the lines and be free and just literally choose for yourself what it is what do you enjoy, what do you want to do, and you actually get to go do that. And that's what we get to say in our lives too. Like,
Yeah, so
what
good.
do you want to do?
And then the next is creating a moral code of which to live and eat by. Our society is also very moral, like this is right and this is wrong, very tied in with religion. It just gets so deep and so messy when you think, oh no, it's just about not eating bread. It's like, no, it's so much bigger than that. And then the last one that's also very true, creating a common bond and a community, particularly for women. Like, hello, I bonded with so many people. Well, actually, I was like so next level that I think I was really annoying about dieting and like the things I would say and comments I would make. But it was still that understanding of like, you hate your body and so do I. Oh, ha, ha, ha. Don't we all?
Let's talk about it
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Let's make a pact and have a plan of what we're going to eat and let's do this together. And da, da, da.
We're going to be accountability partners and we're going to work out every day and we're going to, oh gosh, I have done that with some friends and let me tell you.
Yes, very harmful. So that's principle 1, rejecting the diet mentality, realizing you need to understand that diets don't work. You need to really dedicate yourself to this and you need to start assessing how you think about food and your body. And I mean, I personally, if I was doing this again with more of like a plan, because like we said, we kind of just separately before we even knew each other, we both were just like, I can't diet anymore. Okay, what am I going to do? And I was just like, I guess I just need to eat because I just can't. I just cannot. So it doesn't really matter how horrible this new life of mine is going to be because this old life's so horrible that it literally cannot get worse. And so I just allowed myself to eat. But now it's like, okay, if I had more knowledge and I was taking on this journey, I would just start right away figuring out what are my thoughts, what am I thinking, what comments am I making, and how can I start shifting those? Because every comment you shift, your brain starts rewiring new pathways. And now I naturally am like, oh, that's what I want to eat. Yum. But sometimes it's a green smoothie, and sometimes it's a pizza, and sometimes that's the fries on the side, and sometimes that's a salad on the side. It totally depends on how hungry I am, what I feel like eating, how satisfying that's going to be for me. And then I eat and I move on. And I mean, that's the ultimate goal. I had someone in our app was like, can you like explain intuitive eating to me or explain dieting to me? Like in a comment, I'm like, how do you do it? Tell me how to do it. It's like,
I think just to answer that question, part of me is like, if you were going to work on one thing, I mean, of course, there's like so many moving parts. And I think the most important part is to ask yourself, do I want to be doing this right now? Do I want to be eating this right now? And if the answer is no, then don't do it. Then don't eat it.
And too simple.
And that is undieting. It's and it's like, if it's always dropping into your own body. And I know that also takes some work to learn, since we have been taught how to not be in our bodies. We've been in our heads, like with all the rules. I get that it might take some work to viscerally understand what it's like to be in your body, to make your own choice. But once you can drop into your body, it's always just asking yourself, is this okay with me? Do I feel safe doing this? Do I want to do, like, that's what we need to be asking ourselves. And then you just make the choice that is the best choice for you in that moment. And if that's eating a pint of ice cream, that's eating a pint of ice cream. And if that is eating a fresh, delicious salad with a bunch of toppings, then that is the answer too. It's not, again, there's no morality in this. So it's not like, okay. And I know people are thinking like, oh, if that's how you do it, then I'm just going to eat the ice cream every time and never eat another vegetable. We've heard that so many times. That's not the truth, because if you look back on your track record, if you haven't been asking yourself what it is that you truly want in that moment always, I think you got to work on that first, and then be able to see after what you actually do. Because logically you'll think, I'm just going to eat whatever I want then and feel horrible. But that's not true, because if your body's saying like, I feel really horrible right now, I actually don't want that. That's not dieting. That's undieting. So you really got to drop into your body, get to know yourself and get your signals, and stop feeling judged by decisions that you make. It's what choices do I want to make? It doesn't matter what the world tells me, what my friend tells me, what my family member tells me. What do I want to do? And that's undieting. There you go, people. We have learned it all.
There you go. Now we don't need the other 9.
We are done with this podcast forever.
We have now solved all your problems. And it is true. Honestly, if you actually did that, you would solve all your problems. But there's so many layers, like an onion, you got to peel off with these 10 principles.
Yeah. So keep coming back. We'll keep sharing more.
Yeah. Next week we will share principles 2 and 3. We will go over them. They're a little bit quicker, so we will combine them. And we're very excited to be sharing all this, because if you even just listen to this series of the podcast or watch these videos on YouTube, you are going to have a lot of insight, even more than just reading the book. Because reading the book, you cannot hear another person give examples, relay this information. Reading words on a page is still so isolating. So I think even hearing someone talk about it can land differently. So we're so glad you're here. Thank you so much. Please rate and review on the podcast if you're listening, or please like and subscribe on our YouTube channel if you're watching there.
And if you do want to start somewhere, we do have our journal that you can get on Amazon, which is UnDiet Your Mind. It's a 60-day journal. That's just a nice place to start with. Like, if you want to do something for 5-10 minutes a day, that could be a great place to start. So we can put the link in the show notes. And then we also have our app, of course, which is more support and more lessons and courses and meditations, which we'll also put the link to. But those are just very simple things that you can add into your life daily, so it doesn't become some overwhelming like research. It's just, let's just add this into our life. So we'll put that link in. Awesome. Okay, well then we will see you all back next week.
Bye.